I'm meeting with Lucy Fisher today. Hi, Lucy.
Hi.
And she's agreed to do an interview to discuss how she prepared for the CPCE, the exit exam, because she scored 113, which was the highest score of all the Belleville students, and only 70 is needed to pass. So, do I have your permission to share this interview with the rest of the class?
Yes.
So if you could, and by the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
Could you tell me how you prepared for this test?
Sure. One of the things I did first, and it just happened that this passed in front of me, was that I took a quiz to see what type of learning style best suited me. There were 3 options: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, and I scored extremely high in kinesthetic and extremely low in auditory. So I thought with that information, the audio tapes that I've heard work very well with some students probably wouldn't work so well for me. So that's the first thing that I encourage people to do. Feel free to take my advice for what I did, but it might not suit your learning style. So I think that's an important step that really helped me.
Where did you find that test?
I do not remember, but it's something that can be Googleable. Just what type of learning style am I?
Okay.
And then it'll pop up. But
Okay.
It definitely helped. So with that in mind, I went on a road trip with my husband to visit our family, and we were stuck in the car for about 16 hours. And so this was 2 weeks prior to the October 4th date of the exam. And I spent 16 hours in the car just going through the entire encyclopedia, this guy. So what I did was, if I knew the answer, I just went right on and I didn't even read the explanation. But if I didn't know the answer, then I would read through the explanation and kind of see what that was about. The other thing that I did that I found really helpful was there are 2 apps available for Apple products. I don't know if they're available for Android too, but one of them is the NCE and CPCE exam prep. It gives you an option to study or take an exam. And what's really cool about this is that it also shares, I'm not going to the right spot, but it also shares your results. So you can kind of see how you've done each time you take the exam.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
But it's showing a graph, if you can't quite pick this up. And it's really very good. I like that.
And it breaks it down into all the sections that are on the CPCE, so you can see where your strengths and your weaknesses are before you go into the exam.
Wow, that is excellent. Thank you.
Sure. The other thing that I found that was helpful, and it's
And
also...
what's that app called?
This is the NCE and CPCE app. So the way I found it was I went to the App Store and I looked up NCE Prep. And this was one of the things that came up. This is an app that's connected with that Encyclopedia of Counseling Rosenthal book. So it's the same person.
Okay.
Okay. So the other thing that I found really helpful that I did was there is an app called NCE Prep. And this one has a number of different options: a study, an exam. The study guide actually has 290 questions that you can go through, and I have to say that the questions on this prep were different from the questions on the other prep that I just showed you. So it does give you a bit of a variety.
Could you say which questions were closer to what you experienced on the exam?
They were both pretty good. I mean, they were both short multiple choice questions, and that's what the exam was. There were no real long questions on this version of the exam. The third thing that I did was I came across a copy of an NCE prep test that was floating around from a couple people who had taken Nancy Golden's prep class. And that was a 200 plus question exam. And I sat and I went through and I did that twice. And I noticed an improvement in my score the second time I went through. So I'm guessing it helped.
So between the 16-hour trip, your time, how much time would you say you spent on the 2 apps?
So I started those back in August, actually, and I would just, if I'm waiting in the car I'm waiting in line, I'd pull out my iPad, or, so...
How many hours a week would you estimate? you spent with the apps?
Maybe a couple.
2 hours a week?
Maybe at the very most. I'd say
Okay.
it was probably close to half an hour. I didn't really kick my studying into high gear until I took that road trip a couple of weeks
So
before.
the conservative side, let's go with an hour a week for how many weeks?
It was about 4 to 6 weeks.
So 6 hours on the apps.
Mm-hmm.
How much time did you spend on the test?
The prep test that
Prep
I got,
test.
I went straight through and did that, and it took me an hour each time.
So 2 more hours.
Mm-hmm.
So about 25 hours total time?
Yeah, probably.
time?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Mhm.
of those items,
Mhm.
which would you most encourage people to use? All of them? Are they all equally important? Or?
Gosh, for me, I wish I knew what was the most helpful. I have to say for me, it was probably going through the encyclopedia. There were a lot of things that came up, particularly in the research methods and the social and cultural section, that I had never heard prior to reading this. But again, I encourage everybody to figure out what your learning style is and what works best for you. Because I've heard some people have a lot of success with the tapes, others study things, but that just didn't work for me.
And you initially started in August, I think you said?
Yeah, I started messing with the apps in August.
So about 2 months prior.
Yeah.
And then what was it like, say, the day of the test?
For me, let's see. I don't think I slept that well the night before. And my husband came up to St. Charles with me.
So you stayed the night in St. Charles?
No, that morning.
Okay.
I'm in South City, St. Louis, so
Okay.
it's only a half an hour to St. Charles for me. But he wanted to drive, so he did that. And we showed up about half an hour early. It was really, the day of a test, there's always so much anticipation, so of course I had some of that going on. When we sat down and took the actual exam, I was done in an hour.
Did
So
it
was
feel like
pretty
it was
quick.
familiar? Did it feel foreign? Or?
I'd say when I walked out of there, and I've heard a lot of people say this, I had no idea if I passed or if I failed. I did feel like I knew what I knew, but there were a lot of things that I felt really shaky on that I wasn't quite sure. One thing that I did was that I went through the test booklet and I actually circled the answers in the test booklet because it's a Scantron test. Then I went back through and I filled in the Scantron all at once, and that gave me kind of a chance to review it a second time. But whatever answers I wasn't sure with, I went with my gut. And I did not go back. I did not second guess myself. I just went with it.
So you finished in about an hour. That was pretty quick because you have like 4 hours.
Yeah, I know. I was quite quick.
And when you left, did you feel confident that you had passed?
I had no idea.
No idea.
Yeah, I went out. My husband was waiting for me, and I said I have no idea how I did. I hope I passed, but I have absolutely no idea.
So even though you got 113, which is excellent, when you walked out, you weren't sure if you had passed. So I think that's important for people to hear.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any, looking back now in retrospect, is there anything that you have done differently, or are you satisfied with how you prepared?
I might not have spent so much time with the apps. I think they were helpful, but I was probably a little overkill. I probably could have just done the encyclopedia and the paper test prep that I did, the NCE prep, and I would have been okay with that. So, yeah, I think that's the only thing I can think of. That I feel like I pulled more information out of the encyclopedia than the apps.
Okay. And typically, how would you describe yourself as a test taker? Do you feel comfortable about taking tests? Do you agonize over them? Or how would you describe how you...
I get a little nervous before I take the test. I did have a professor along the way. I don't know if anybody's taken classes with Dr. Peter Carriage, but he told us not to stress out about this kind of stuff. Not to get too scared or too worried, because the second you do that, your brain just shuts off that access to that knowledge. He says, you probably have all the knowledge you need. It's all floating back there. And it's the second that you get really nervous, you get really scared, that adrenaline kicks in and that knowledge door just shuts. So, just trying to stay as calm as possible, and I think that's really one of the most helpful things that you can do for your son.
Well, Lucy, I appreciate you doing this.
Sure.
It's been a delight, and I'm so happy that you did so well on the test.
Yeah, good luck to everybody else that's going to take it.
And thank you for doing this interview.
Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.